It is the distant future of 2020. A terrible plague has swept across the planet, killing 98% of human life. Those that are left behind have gathered into small communes, living off the land in a desperate bid for survival in the harsh wilderness. One group, led by a wizened elderly man of the ancient age of 31, everyone else over 30 was killed by the plague, looks out over his disciples. My children, many weeks have passed since the before time. But on this day we gather to remember those who came before us. Disciple, bring forth the chalice. The leader gestures to one of his followers, who wears only an old snowsuit with one of those floppy-eared hats. They carry over a large travel mug. The leader holds it up before the gathered throng. Extra large double-double, the crowd chants. Extra large double-double, extra large double-double. In the before time, coffee flowed like water, and cream and sugar were available at every table. But now we must savor every drop of this sacred liquor. Praise to the Canuckinomicon that we have access to the storehouse of coffee. Praise be, the crowd echoes back. Welcome, Canuckleheads, to the Canuckinomicon.
That's a good one.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and others. I am Benjamin Wandio. I am here with my dad, Todd Wandio, as usual. Apologies for the late release of this episode. December is a very busy month for us. It's my birthday, it's my sister's birthday, it's Christmas time, so we've just been a little bit run ragged trying to get episodes together. But here we are.
Also, you have a broken wing.
Yes, it's almost better now. The
That's
pot
good.
helps.
Well, yes, it is a cure-all.
No, it's good for inflammation. Or so I'm told. So we have a bit of a different episode for you today. There are a number of topics that would make for good episodes, except for the fact there's just not a lot written about them. And there's usually sometimes just not even a lot to talk about, so not enough to really fill a whole hour. So we have collected a couple of, well, more than a couple stories that we're going to be sharing with you guys today. Just little short topics. And I think we've got about, 5?
Yeah, I think 5. Well, mine's just little bits here, little Canadiana, what do you want to call them? Morsels.
Morsels, yes.
Amuse-bouche.
Amuse-bouche, little tiny tasty treats.
Yum, yum.
So yeah, I'm going to start us off if that's okay.
Please do. It's your podcast.
Yes. So there are many members of the corvid family which I admire. Very few which I do not. I do legitimately like magpies and crows. I find their intelligence impressive. I think their antics are rather hilarious. And I actually think magpies are quite pretty. They have beautiful little blue-green iridescent patches on their wings. So we're all pretty familiar with crows and magpies, but many people don't realize that jays are actually members of the corvid family as well. So talking blue jays are actually quite closely related to crows, as are so-called whiskey jacks, which are also known as gray jays or Canada jays.
I quite enjoy the name of the Whiskey Jack, just because it's got whiskey in the title. Unlike poutine, which I don't eat because it's got poo in the name. And you shouldn't eat poo.
Yeah, that's right. No, poo typically not good for you. That's the parts that your body is trying to get rid of.
Mm-hmm.
What's interesting about the name Whiskey Jack is it actually has nothing to do with whiskey. is just an anglicization of the name of a Cree trickster god. That he was kind of a trickster and a teacher and a sort of a messenger spirit, kind of known for being like a little bit, sneaky. And in fact, the Grey Jay, the Whiskey Jack, is associated with this Cree god, and it's believed in a lot of First Nations communities that if you see a Grey Jay in the morning, that's actually a good omen. You're going to have, positive events occurring that day. In January of 2015, the Royal Canadian Geographic Society started a project known as the National Bird Project. So there's a few things to note here. The Canadian Geographic Society is actually a non-profit organization. Thus, they can't really lobby the government, or they risk losing their non-profit status. So they can't actually make any policy changes on an official level. But when they launched the project, they were actually hoping that publicity would make the government want to adopt a national bird as a symbol for Canada. Fun fact, we don't have a national bird.
No, isn't that crazy?
Yeah. We have two national animals. One is the beaver. The other one is an animal I'm going to cover later this episode. Yes. So we have a national animal. We have a national flag, national anthem. We even have a tartan, by the way.
Yeah, I saw the tartan on there when I was doing research as well. Quite nice.
We have a maple leaf tartan. So this wasn't an attempt by the Canadian Geographic Society to actually usurp the Canada goose as our national bird. We don't have one. And actually, when it came time for the Canadian Geographic Society to decide which of their top contenders, because they had a huge vote, the Canada goose was actually in that top 5. So the project had 3 phases. The first phase was the selection of candidates. They had a huge list of birds that people could vote on, and they had about 50,000 people in total vote. They wanted a bird that they felt could represent Canada's very diverse ecological regions, which Canada's got prairies, tundra, dense forests, wetlands, maritime coasts, mountains, and even a placid temperate Cascade rainforest.
Don't forget the arid country around Medicine Hat. And
that's right. We have deserts. We have 2 deserts because we also have Kamloops.
Right.
I think it's Kamloops is a desert
Well,
in
that
BC.
whole interior is technically a Mediterranean climate, isn't it?
Yep. Yeah, so we have quite a broad variety of climates in Canada, and so they wanted a bird that they felt could closely represent as much of Canada as possible. So the 5 finalists were the black-capped chickadee, the Canada goose, the snowy owl, the common loon, and of course, the Grey Jay. Despite making it into the finals, the Canada goose was not even, it didn't even get close to the most votes.
It is a reviled bird.
It is. People hate it from all over the world. Everywhere where this bird lives, it's hated.
But they're good eating.
Yes, they are. They taste like roast beef, as we found.
Yes.
It only got about 3,616 of the total 50,000 votes. The only bird in the top 5 that it even beat out was the black-capped chickadee, which came in with 3,324 votes. The next candidate above the Canada goose was, in fact, the Grey Jay, which had 7,918, almost a fifth of the total 50,000 votes, and more than double the 2 runners-ups. If it was votes alone that mattered, it would have actually been the common loon that won. It got 13,995 votes. This makes sense to me because I can't think of a bird that Canadians would more identify with as a national symbol than the common loon.
Yeah, I'd agree. That's the sound of summer.
Well, not just the sound of summer. We know it almost as well as we know the Queen's own face.
Mm-hmm.
The loon is on the $1 coin.
That is correct.
Yep. So it's the loony, right? It's a sound that we associate with the Canadian wilderness. It's a bird that is literally already on our money. So it makes a lot of sense to me that the loon would have been number one in terms of votes. But votes alone didn't matter. Even the snowy owl actually got more votes than the gray jay, and I would say that it's a bird that is almost as equally kind of associated with the Nordic world as the gray jay.
Right, but not all regions.
Well, this is where it gets interesting. The reason they went with the gray jay is that it has never been reported outside of North America. That disqualifies pretty much all other members of the corvid family. Ravens and crows are common across the entire planet. Blue jays, I think, are even sighted outside North America quite frequently. Canadian geese can't be included then because they have been introduced to England, Norway, and other places in Western Europe as game birds.
Much to the chagrin.
Yep. I'm absolutely sure. This also disqualifies the snowy owl, which actually ranges across the boreal the world over, including Siberia, Norway, Finland, Sweden, and even northern China.
Yeah.
And it actually disqualifies the loon. The loon actually winters in England, France, coastal Iceland, and along the northern fjords of Norway, Sweden, and Finland.
Wow.
Yeah. The gray jay's range is almost entirely contained within Canada, with only a few areas in northern United States and in Alaska where it ranges outside of Canada. Not only that, its range covers most of Canada, favoring Canada's vast boreal forests and our mountainous regions. It's also, as I said, important to First Nations culture, being associated with the Cree trickster spirit Whiskey Jack. Seeing a gray jay in the morning, like I said, is said to be a good omen and a positive sign of things to come. They're also extremely intelligent birds, as most members of the corvid family, and they're neither hunted nor endangered, but they are prime indicators of the health of the boreal forest, which is one of the most important ecological regions in Canada, taking up almost 2/3 of our total land area.
It's our carbon sink, isn't it?
It's one of the biggest carbon sinks in the world, actually.
Right. I bet you pretty soon it's going to overtake the Amazon.
Well, the way they've been burning it down, it probably will.
Yeah.
And let's admit it, I would much rather have a cute little fluff ball as our national bird instead of a horrible flying shit machine, despite how poetically appropriate that may actually seem given our recent policy changes with regards to the environment.
Oh, you got to get that plug in there.
I sure do. Why don't you share one of yours with us now?
Okay. I had looked at lots of different things. I want to start. It's a total 180 from the topic we just covered. I want to talk hockey.
Of course you do.
It's Canada's national sport.
Yeah.
And I thought, let's go for some weird, wacky stuff about hockey.
Sure.
Rather than stories, these are little sort of point form things. Here's the thing. When hockey was played in its early days, a frozen patty of cow poop was used as a puck.
I have heard that.
Yeah. I think in some communities it was also a lump of horse dung.
Yeah, well, I'm just trying to think. I guess rubber probably wasn't widely available when it was first being played.
Well, I think the first hockey games were probably very rudimentary kind of things like pond hockey, right? And there probably wasn't a standardized stick.
No, I know they had like wooden skates.
Like it was just a plank of wood that you stood on.
Yeah, you strapped it to your boots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is like a lot along the St. Lawrence and stuff, the frozen rivers and such.
That's right.
You would go along there.
I think in many rural communities, though, in Canada, it was just a game that people would sort of play for fun.
Yeah, stickball.
Yeah, stickball, sort of field hockey.
Yeah.
You know, which is based on an old Irish game.
Yeah, that was
Can't remember what it was called.
Hurley?
Hurling.
Hurling.
Anyway, a very brutal kind of game. Cross between
still
lacrosse
played.
and hockey.
Yeah.
Yeah, brutal. Anyway, so in the early days, of course, you know, what do you use as a ball? And I think the most available source for youngsters was a frozen cow patty.
Probably, and it probably slid across the ice nicely.
Yeah, I'll bet. And if
The other material,
if you
like
lost
a wooden
or
disc, is about the only other thing I could think of.
yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's an interesting point. Here's another one. Hockey pucks are frozen before a game to prevent them from bouncing during play. They're kept in a special cooler.
Yeah.
And that's why
That's interesting.
later in a game, you'll see the puck bouncing a lot more.
As it warms up.
Yeah, the ice surface gets rougher, but also the hockey pucks get warmer. Then they'll replace it with a cooler one to try to keep the puck from bouncing as much. Yeah,
I did not know that.
now you do. Merry Christmas, baby. I hope you're enjoying my brand new car. Merry Christmas, baby. I hope you're enjoying my brand new car. With that sugar in the tank now, you ain't gonna drive too far. I bought a Rolls Royce with my heart and dough. You froze all my assets. Down the road you go. Merry Christmas, baby. I hope you're enjoying my brand new car. You won it in the divorce, but it ain't gonna drive too far. Here you go. After winning the Stanley Cup, which for those of you that don't know hockey, Stanley Cup is like our Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Anyway, in 1924, the Montreal Canadiens players drove to their victory party with the trophy in the trunk of the car. When the car got a flat, they removed the cup to get the spare tire. Once they changed the tire, they forgot all about the cup and left it behind in a snowbank. Later that night, they realized their folly and returned to get the trophy. Luckily, it was still where they left it.
How many times has the Stanley Cup just gone missing or showed up in somebody's attic?
Well, because that's the thing. Every player on the team, on the cup-winning team, gets to spend time with the cup.
Yeah.
With the real cup. So There was another one. I don't think I included it, but it was like all the different things that have been eaten out of the Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
From breakfast
right.
cereal to chicken wings to chili.
That's just wild.
It is wild. Like you think, I think, in part it's amusing, but second, I think it says something about the earthy nature of the sport.
Yeah.
That the people that still play it hold to those old traditions that this is a game played with a piece of cow crap.
Yeah.
Right?
That's wild.
So, well, and there is no Stanley Cup game, unlike football trophies. It's like, you have a game 7 of a series. So,
Yeah.
but there isn't like these teams all square off and then they play for the one game of the cup.
Yeah, it's not done in a traditional tournament bracket style. Mm-hmm. It's more of a round robin kind of points.
Whittling down until you get 2 teams and then whoever's healthy enough to win.
Yeah, basically.
That's all about Canada, that. Okay,
Yeah.
Here's something about goalies. If a team's 2 goalies are injured during a game, the rules state, and they still state this, that anybody can play the position, including a fan from inside the arena.
A fan?
Yes. They have had, and I don't know if they've done this in national hockey games. I'd have to research. But I know they've done it in AHL games, so affiliates, the farm leagues.
Yeah.
Where the local fireman who plays on a pickup hockey team has played goal for the team because their 2 goalies went down.
That's wild.
Yeah.
What a way to get your breakout in the sport, eh?
Well, initially the goaltender was just a third defenseman.
I guess, yeah.
And eventually they realized that guy that keeps going back to stop pucks from going in the net, he keeps getting hurt. So they start allowing that third defenseman to wear more padding to get a wider
and it
stick.
changes the role.
Yeah, it changed the role of the game, but essentially anybody can play goal.
That's wild.
It's so cool. I've always wanted to be the guy in the penalty box, the penalty box timer. You see those old crotchety guys sitting in there. I want to be him, but I don't know how you get that gig, But this one's a close second. Play goal in a National Hockey League game.
Yeah.
Here's another. I'll be talking about a goalie in a couple minutes. When I talk about the worst. The worst players in Hockey League history. At one time, the rules stated that the team captain had to be on the ice at all times.
Whoa. Dude, could you imagine?
The guy must have been a tank.
Oh, boy, he'd be so tired.
Wow. He probably didn't skate a whole lot, right? Like, he coasted a bunch. Obviously,
just float around.
As the game sped up and the ice size increased, I'm sure they had to put rules in there. That's why you see assistant captains on every shift.
Yeah. I'm trying to think, because captains are often centers. Is that what they're called?
Usually the captain is the center. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's not necessarily true. Some teams, Oilers, for instance, Edmonton Oilers have had a history of having defensemen as captains. Generally, the captain is the person that will put the team on their back, set the tone for the game. Yeah. Not always the highest scorer, but always the person in the locker room who commands respect.
Man, I'm just trying to think, could you imagine being a center and having to be on the ice
for the entire
whole
game? Yeah. It'd be more common for a defenseman, for sure, because they log up to 30 minutes of ice time in a game. But for forwards in today's game, if they get 20 minutes, that's like a ton.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just wild.
Let's see. Oh, here's a neat one. in one of the most unique hockey records, Pittsburgh's Mario Lemieux, who's a Canadian, which is why I included this, scored 5 different ways in one game.
Huh!
He scored a goal at even strength. He got one on the power play. He got one shorthanded, which is when they were defending a power play.
Right.
Another one on a penalty shot, and a final one into an empty net. 5 goals in one game. In
Nice.
5 different ways. And that's a record. It's never been broken.
Huh. It must always suck being on a power play and then having the opposing team score on you.
Oh, the shorthanded goal? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah. It's
That's gotta be embarrassing.
it's humiliating. And the Oilers this year, as good as they've been offensively, have not scored a shorthanded goal this year.
Oh.
They're the only team in the NHL not to have a shorthanded goal.
Oh.
They also, with all the scoring power they have, can't seem to hit an empty net. They've got a couple
That's
empty
embarrassing.
net. They've got a couple empty net goals, but
Yeah.
they're way down in the league on empty netters.
Like, not having a shorthanded goal is one thing.
Yeah.
Because that's, like, not easy to do. Not scoring on an empty net.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like
right?
being handed to you.
They've had a real hard time this year getting out of their own zone when it comes
That's
down to crunch
wild.
time, like when the other team pulls
Yeah.
a goalie. So they're more defensive minded. It's kind of like protect the lead. They don't care about that extra goal because they've already got the lead. They're just fighting to stay in the game, right? So
Right.
anyway.
I guess they're so used to losing.
Yeah. All right. Here's the worst hockey player of all time in the NHL.
Okay.
He's noted as the worst. And he's an Edmonton native. His name is Ken McCauley. He played his entire 2-season NHL career with the New York Rangers from 1943 to 1945. He appeared in a total of 96 games before moving on to the Western Canadian Senior Hockey League. McCauley posted an NHL total of just 17 wins with a goals against average of 5.61. That means an average of almost 6 goals a game he let in. So that's like horrible.
Yeah, that's like most games don't go much above like a goal, like a score of like 10 or 11.
Well, that's really rare.
Yeah.
Your goals in hockey will be more like if it's a 5-goal game,
Yeah.
that's pretty astounding. They're
So-
usually 2-3 goals a game, maybe 4.
So letting in 6 is atrocious
On average.
on
That
average.
means, that means some days, okay, here's his goal against average for the 1943-44 campaign was 6.24.
Ooh.
He let in 6.25 goals a game. If that's
Oh my
not enough,
God.
his other claim to fame is being part of the largest margin of victory since the introduction of the red line in 1943.
Oh boy.
The Rangers were beaten 15-0 by the Detroit Red Wings.
That's wild.
15-0 on January 23rd, 1943.
That's
McCauley
ridiculous.
surrendered 8 goals in the third period alone.
That's oh my God. Just in
worst-
the third period, over half the goals.
Yeah. So the worst hockey player in NHL history.
Is he like moving out of the way of the puck?
Yeah, almost. You'd almost have to be trying to lose at that point.
Yeah, that's astoundingly bad.
Just one more before I pass it back to you.
Yeah.
Is the worst hockey team in the National Hockey League was the
It's not the Oilers?
No. No way. Oh, no way. The 1974-75 Washington Capitals.
Oh.
This was in their first year. So
Yeah.
they were, what do they call it, expansion team that year.
Yeah.
They had a record of 8 wins, 67 losses, 5 ties.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
That's That's bottom of the league, at least.
Oh, it was abysmal.
They're digging
however-
a new level for them to take up.
Yeah, their dreadfulness was not limited to team records. Not by a lot. Goaltender Michel Belhumer went 0-24.
Oh,
So no wins. And along with his following netminder, Ron Lowe, who went on to coach the Edmonton Oilers at one point as the goalie coach and as the head coach, they allowed a combined 446 goals. That's an NHL record. They were so
my
bad.
God.
They lost 4 games by 10 or more goals.
That's
And Coach Jim Anderson had to resign after being
my
diagnosed with stomach ulcers caused by stress. And the Capitals, from 1974 until just, I think, 2 years ago, had not won a Stanley Cup. They won their first Stanley Cup 2 years ago, mostly due to the grit and gumption of winger Alex Ovechkin.
Oh, yeah. Ovechkin. I know Ovechkin.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of them Slavic players.
Russian dude. Yeah, so there you go. There's some odd Canadian factoids for you.
Some little hockey facts.
Some little
Todd's
amuse
Hockey
bouche
Corner.
that you can crank out at a dinner somewhere.
Yeah, we're
did you know?
preparing you guys to dazzle and amaze your family and friends at Christmas dinner.
Yes,
or
with
Hanukkah
non-confrontational topics.
That's right.
Because if you know our family, Ben and
God.
I, we have to walk on eggshells. It doesn't matter what we say; it's always controversial. So we can say, so this is all perfect hockey or perfect dinner conversation.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, getting back to my theme of national symbols, the Canadian national anthem actually has a bit of more of a mixed up story than most Canadians are aware of. For instance, how old do you think the Canadian national anthem is?
Me?
Yeah.
I think 20 years.
20 years.
Yeah.
It was written in 1999.
Really?
No.
Well, because I think here's the thing. Like a lot of countries, I was thinking that maybe it wasn't officially our national anthem.
It has been our
like in the
national
United
anthem
States.
since, I think, 1967.
Well, it's
But
the
the song
anthem that
itself-
I've always sung. But,
Yeah.
like, for instance, in the States, Star Spangled Banner is not their national anthem.
No, it's
America the Beautiful.
America the Beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I thought it was a situation like that where, you know,
No.
our anthem was something
the
like
song
the Maple
itself-
Leaf Forever or something.
Well, Maple Leaf Forever almost was our national anthem, but it did not become it.
Yeah,
for a
not
long time, our
hummable.
national anthem was God Save the Queen.
Right.
Up until 1967, when it was replaced officially with O Canada, or at least a version of O Canada, as we'll get into.
Right.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I mean, I remember singing God Save the Queen at school.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
even after the anthem was adopted, we still sang. We sang both. We sang God Save the Queen and the national anthem.
Well, Canada's national anthem and the French verse of the national anthem are both over 100 years old. The tune was actually originally penned in 1880 by Calixa Lavallée. Lavallée, as in like the valley. Contrary to popular thought, Lavallée was not an obscure music teacher and did not pen the words himself. Rather, he was actually commissioned by the Quebec government to write a tune for a quote-unquote national hymn, which had been written, the lyrics of which had already been written by Judge Adolphe Basile Routhier. It was first performed in June of 1880 and was then promptly forgotten. The obituaries of both Routhier and Lavallée don't even bother to mention that they were the composers of this song. And yeah, the original version of O Canada was actually completely in French. English Canadians probably didn't even hear it until 1901 when the Duke and Duchess of Cornwall visited. For their visit, Dr. Thomas Bedford Richardson wrote an English translation of this song, which is actually quite different from today's version. The translation that Robertson wrote went, "O Canada, our father's land of old, thy brow is crowned with leaves of red and gold. Beneath the shade of the holy cross thy children own their birth. No stains thy glorious annals gloss, since valor shield thy hearth. Almighty God, on thee we call, defend our rights, forfend this nation's thrall."
That, it is, if it was written as a national hymn,
Yeah.
that really fits the idea of hymn.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is Robertson's version of the song is a very religious song.
Yes.
Which makes sense. It was written in the 19th century when most of Canada was still largely Christian of one sort or another. This is not actually a carryover from the French version. Routhier's version is a much more typical patriotic song. Here's an English translation. "O Canada, land of our forefathers, thy brow was wreathed with a glorious garland of flowers. As in thy arm ready to wield the sword, so also is it ready to carry the cross. Thy history is an epic of the most brilliant exploits. Thy valor steeped in faith will protect our homes and our rights."
Yeah. Okay. So that's much more like a nationalistic theme.
Yeah, and that's the version that that makes up the French verse to this day.
Right.
The French version of that has actually been maintained in our national anthem. Unlike the English version. The English version has been changed quite a bit. So while there are still overtly Christian overtones in the French version, it's much less so than Robertson's.
Right.
Another interesting thing is that Robertson's and the original Routhier version didn't need any weird or forceful jiggering of the lyrics to make the song gender inclusive. It never specifically mentions a gender of the individuals that make up Canada. The original English version was much more general in who it was speaking to, and the French version doesn't really mention anyone. It just says, "We'll defend our nation, our forefathers' nation." While this would become something of a lame non-controversy in the news many years later when Prime Minister Justin Trudeau declared it should be changed from "all our sons command" to the rather clunky and unpoetic, though probably more grammatically correct "all of us command," yes. Nothing like being written by committee.
Well, it's true because it makes sense because true patriot love
in all of
us command.
Yeah.
Yes. True patriot love in all thy sons command.
Yeah, it's just commanding it in your male children.
Well, it's a typical use of that word of the male gender to represent all of humankind.
Yeah. So. But it's outdated. It's a little less. Yeah. I don't know. Even that we'll find like that version of the song is much newer.
Yes.
Than the Robertson version or the Routhier version by far.
Right.
Much newer than the Routhier version. And it wasn't even the only version of the song that was floating around.
There were other ones, yeah.
Yeah, and that came about because of a magazine called Collier's Weekly, which, as far as I can tell, based on my research, is actually an American magazine. So
it might be now, but I don't think it was then.
it was then.
Oh,
I
was
looked it up. It was written in New York.
Okay. For
Yeah.
Canadian audiences.
I'm not sure for who. It was apparently just said it was an American magazine. I couldn't find like very much about it at all, other than
Yeah.
it was around in the early 20th century.
Okay.
But it had kind of launched a bit of a small competition in 1908 looking for new English lyrics for for this song, which at the time was not really considered a national anthem at all. It was just a fun little French song that they wanted some English lyrics for because the Robertson lyrics were a little bit crunchy.
Churchy.
A little thick.
Yeah.
That doesn't really make for a catchy bar song when you're throwing in
No.
that many thee, thys, and thous.
Yes. Thou dost.
Yeah. So several versions were created, with one in particular catching on. Robert Stanley Weir's version of O Canada, the one that we mostly know today. This one did include that hugely controversial line that everybody was so shocked and appalled by getting changed. All thy sons command, God forbid they change that. Which was written in 1908.
Yeah. And at that time, I mean, you know, you're talking about sending young men off to war,
Yeah.
right? So,
And here's the thing. While it became kind of one of the most well-known versions of the patriotic song, by 1914 even beating out Maple Leaf Forever, it was not the only version. There was actually a different one that was much more popular in British Columbia than Robert Weir's. I can't remember the name of that author, but O Canada was not even officially picked up by the Canadian government as our national anthem until 1967. At this point, they decided that this was going to replace God Save the Queen. We still maintain God Save the Queen because it is the English national anthem, and we still regard ourselves as a dominion of the crown, not of England, but of the crown. There were a few changes that were made, apparently, to make the song more appropriate for a national anthem. The line, "And stand on guard, O Canada," which originally followed True North Strong and Free, was replaced with the now more familiar "From Far and Wide, O Canada."
right.
Meant to kind of be more inclusive to new residents to Canada, to immigrants and such. So, changing the song to be more inclusive and more broadly appealing is not even a new thing for the government to do. When they were first adopting it, that was something they were doing.
Okay. Well, I was just looking up the lyrics for Maple Leaf Forever.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting because it names more place names.
Yeah.
Here it is.
More about Canada.
Yes, about Canada and about the things that are in Canada. The thistle, shamrock, rose entwined, the maple leaf forever. Our connection to Britannia.
Yeah.
God save our queen and heaven bless the maple leaf forever. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of... So... I mean, yeah, it's a patriotic song. It's sort of defines what Canada was about at that time.
Yeah.
But it doesn't really collect us as a people.
No.
No.
What's also interesting about O Canada is that there were actually several versions that the Parliament was looking at, especially ones that were more had more broad appeal as a bilingual anthem.
Right.
However, it was decided that we would just simply maintain the original Rothier French version, and the new Weir English versions would be used. Because it was considered easier and kind of more appealing to new Canadians. June 18th, 1980, the centenary year of Confederation, O Canada was officially accepted as Canada's national anthem by an act of Parliament in order to fulfill a promise that it would occur as part of the centenary celebrations.
Okay. And that's
Quebec.
what I was remembering.
Yeah, that's what you're remembering. So you were remembering the time when it was being kind of phased in, 1967 to 1980, and then in 1980 it's finally fully accepted as a national anthem.
Yes, its acceptance as a quote unquote, although it had been our unofficial national anthem for a number of years. Yeah.
Yeah. Because they wanted to bring it in as part of the 100th anniversary of the country.
Right.
Quebec has a somewhat mixed up sentiment regarding the national anthem. That's a whole episode in itself because it has a lot to do with what Canadians should really remember is that the French Canadians were Canadian before the English were. And I don't mean that in the sense that the French were here first, but the people who now call themselves Québécois were the first people to call themselves Canadiens.
Right.
Anglos did not consider themselves Canadian until after World War I. And the reason for this was that there was a huge amount of losses and a lot of heartache that was caused by the Anglos basically being forced to engage in a war they had nothing to do with.
Yeah.
All because they identified as English. They were proud to go fight for the fatherland, to go sally forth, on behalf of the Queen initially. And then World War I turned into World War I. And suddenly it was a lot less glorious and a lot less, nationalistic pride and a lot more, why are we even here?
Yeah.
Like, we crossed the Atlantic. These people haven't done anything to us. This isn't our fight. And so after that, the English started calling themselves Canadians instead of Englishmen.
That's right.
And the Québécois started calling themselves Québécois.
Oh.
And it's around that time that Quebec stops singing the national anthem.
We usurped their Canadianism.
Yeah. The Québécois, Quebec is the only province that does not have any laws or regulations stating that when the anthem must be sung. In fact, about the only event where it is commonly sung are Montreal Canadiens hockey games.
Yeah, because that's an NHL requirement. You have to sing both national anthems, or if it's American and Canadian team, or the Canadian anthem.
Well, and there's also some thought that it might just basically be a way for Canadians fans to kind of get in the faces of American teams.
Maybe, yeah.
Kind of like one-upping their patriotism.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
And I had seen some about the controversy about the anthem, but I was always astounded by that because, it's written by a Frenchman.
Yeah.
The setting that we use. It is the same setting from the original Calixa Lavalley version. Yeah,
it's the exact same one that Lavalley wrote. But it's kind of become like, and it's funny, apparently there is actually a town named after Calixa Lavalley. It's got a population of about 50 people. They don't even sing it there.
He was a big minstrel show entertainer.
That does not surprise me at all.
In the States, in New Orleans, he tried to. Calixa was not his original first name. That was a name he adopted to make him sound more Cajun.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
He did the whole blackface thing, and he was actually quite famous for it.
Yeah, Canada's history of minstrel shows is actually kind of fascinating.
Yeah.
Because while slavery was never as big a problem in Canada as it was in the United States, there was still this understanding that white Canadians had that black men are here to serve us. And it was because of trains.
Okay.
So when you got on a train, it was not uncommon to see, just like, especially if you're traveling from between Canada and the US, to see a black man basically standing there smiling, taking your bags for you, saying yes sir, and all that stuff. So there was always this understanding that they still kind of served this servant role. And then there was a whole problem with kind of the exoticism of black people that made minstrel shows in Canada very popular.
Right. We were an isolated people. And we thought that was our way of connecting connecting with the world.
Whoa, boy. God damn Canada. I listened to a really interesting interview as a historian on black history in Canada, talking about the history of minstrel shows in the light of the Justin Trudeau scandals.
Right.
And about how, like, a lot of people were just kind of brushing it off because, like, well, it's not like we have a history of problems with that in Canada. And it's like, well, we kind of do, guys.
Yeah, we kind of do. But here's the thing. Canadians do everything so not over the top.
Yeah.
You know, it's always understated. So minstrelry would not be overtly racist, but just by its nature is.
Yeah, it's exactly.
You know.
Yeah, well, also keep in mind that a lot of the minstrel shows that we were getting were American troops performing them.
That's right.
Yeah, so they were, and it was always this kind of country mouse, city mouse thing that they were always portraying in them. Like, that was the common trope of it, was that you'd have the guy on the plantation and the urban northern black guy with the white gloves and everything.
Right.
And they were a total mess. They were real bad.
Well, they were real bad for this time. For that time, they were. That's what was normal. I mean, anytime we look at history, we have to examine it through the lens of the people who lived it, not the people today, because that's what we call revisionist history, right? Where we go back and we try to rewrite the history texts to make them reflect how heinous people were in the past as compared to people today.
Well, but we need to remember that this is part of also, though, maintaining a power dynamic, which is why we have to be a little bit critical of it. It was part of maintaining a status quo that we now understand is not a good status quo to have. It's not something we should be seeking to return to.
Right. Yeah. No. And so when our prime minister is caught in that mocking kind of
at the young
role,
age of 30.
Yeah. Yeah, he was not a child. It wasn't a teenage Halloween costume he was wearing.
No, he was at a work party at a private school, which is exactly why it was so problematic and why I kind of find a lot of his apologies kind of ring a bit hollow, because I'm like, dude, you were 30.
Yeah,
you knew better.
Yeah, I didn't know better. I'm learning every day. Okay.
That's not an excuse.
Yeah.
That's a bad excuse.
Impeach the prime minister. We don't even have. All we have is a non-confidence vote in Canada,
which we have to rely on Parliament to give.
Yes. Yes, yep. And the party would have to remove him
as leader,
as prime minister. Yes.
Yeah. A non-confidence vote could simply remove the party, but the problem with that is that the party has a majority. So he can't be removed through
if a non-confidence vote goes through, it's usually initiated by the party. So that would be saying we don't have confidence in our own leader.
Yeah. And so that's the thing, is they would have to just switch out there's no way that we as Canadian citizens could start a non-confidence movement. No,
it just doesn't exist.
It just no. We don't have that option. We don't have
the mechanism for it.
Yeah.
Anywho,
so I plan on doing an episode concerning kind of Quebec national sentiment, how Quebec feels about its Canadianness, because that's a whole big complex topic, and it's a really important one for us to keep in mind, because when we hear people talking about Western separatism, we have to understand that it is fundamentally different in its nature and its reasoning than Quebec separatism was.
Yeah.
So while people often compare Alberta to Quebec in terms of its separatist sentiment, we need to remember that Western separatism is
Western
very
separatism
different.
is economic.
It is
Quebec
very much
separatism
economic.
is cultural.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it has a very different flavor to it.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's hear another one of your stories.
Well, yeah, well, let's lighten it up a little bit. Hard case. For gosh sakes, it's Christmas. All right. Here are some Canadian Christmas traditions and facts.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. Canadians love department stores and booze.
I am surprised by neither of those things.
Yeah, I know, right? According to Stats Canada, Canadians prefer to shop in person. Now, it is starting to shift. That shift to the online.
Well, especially this time of year.
Yes. With total sales of nearly $3.2 billion, the number one
wild.
place for Canadians to check off their holiday shopping list was department stores.
Like, are we talking...
The Bay, Eaton, Sears. So now it would be Walmart, Canadian Tire.
The Bay is still around.
The Bay is still around, but I don't think it's as popular a shopping
No,
spot anymore.
I think the Bay has become much more of a kind of a high-end department store, kind of a boutique level.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Care to guess the second most visited venue for festive spenders?
Liquor store.
Yeah. Pop the cork and raise a glass to Canada's beer, liquor, and wine stores. $1.6 billion worth of holiday sales.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's going to be most of their sales for the year.
Oh, I don't think so.
No, you're right. I think Canada Day.
Canada Day, Labor Day. I mean, Canadians
Any
don't
long
even.
weekend.
They will invent a reason to go buy booze. No, really. It's like, holy crap! It's Thursday. Let's go for a. Let's
go
call
for
it
a beer.
Let's call it Thirsty Thursday.
Yeah.
It's Friday. Finally the weekend's here. You
I'm
just
a
got
little
drunk
bit
last night.
disappointed I'm a little bit disappointed that I'm having to go to 2 Christmas parties this Saturday, because it means I can't drink at the second one that I'm going to.
Oh,
Because I have to drive and I can't.
right.
Like I have to be able to take my wife home, right? Because she
Right.
can't go home at 3 a.m.
Yes.
So
Oh, the second one is the later one.
yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, the first one is our family one that we're going to, which is a little earlier in the day. We're just kind of showing up, having a snack, and then we're going to our friend's solstice party.
Yeah, that'll be cool. Yeah, neat.
Yeah.
Here's another point, another little fact. Canadians love eggnog.
I'm also not surprised by
Probably
that.
more than any other country, I think, which is weird because I can't stand eggnog.
I love eggnog.
Do you?
Well, I have soy nog. I don't really have eggnog anymore, but I love it.
Maybe you're more of a Canadian than me then because I can't stand the stuff. I think
I have
why,
probably been hitting the weed a little harder than you have.
why waste a good cup of rum? That's my.
You know what? I won't even necessarily have rum in my eggnog. I'll
just drink
usually
it like
have
that.
just a bit of nutmeg and cinnamon on top mixed in.
Yeah, some people I've seen.
Or
put
I'll have it with my coffee.
I've
instead
seen
of
people
cream.
put eggnog in their coffee, and I'm like, what the hell are you doing?
You put cream in your coffee, you devil.
Yeah, but you know what? The coffee I have this morning was black.
Well, that's the coffee I usually have is black.
My home coffee is generally black. My to-go coffee is usually cream.
Yeah,
I don't
usually
trust
put
the,
a tiny bit of sugar in my home coffee, but
Yeah.
I'll have like a full teaspoon or two with my work coffee because the coffee at work tastes like licking out an ashtray.
Yeah, that's right.
Work coffee is the worst.
According to Stats Can, more than 2.6 million liters of eggnog were sold in Canada in November 2016. So who knows whether that's up now or there's all this controversy about dairy and stuff. So that might be down
But
a
here's
bit.
the thing. Like I don't drink dairy and I don't do eggs. You can get soy nog and almond nog, which is what I usually drink.
Right.
So I don't even think the whole controversy about dairy and eggs would matter.
Okay.
Because you can get dairy-free and egg-free eggnog.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Christmas isn't only once a year. There are a number of Canadian locations with Christmassy names. Welcome to Reindeer Station, Northwest Territories.
That makes sense.
Christmas Island, Nova Scotia.
Yeah.
Sled Lake in Saskatchewan. Holly, Ontario.
Yeah.
Noel, Nova Scotia. Turkey Point, Ontario. And most appropriate this year, because I think this is the coined phrase of the year, Snowflake, Manitoba.
Oh, God.
Snowflakes. Yes.
Snowflake. That's like the worst insult, because that comes from what's his show? That show, it had Brad Pitt. He beat himself up in it. I think it was Brad Pitt. I don't know.
Was that Fight Club?
Fight Club. Fight Club. He used the word snowflake was supposed to be an insult for guys who weren't manly enough, which the whole thesis of Fight Club is that toxic masculinity is bad.
Yeah.
And so he's the real quote-unquote snowflake.
Right.
Because he's so obsessed with being masculine enough.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Interesting stuff. Well, so the music that people are hearing, you didn't get to hear it because you don't get to hear the music until the final edit is done.
Yep.
Is done by John Misfortune Dixon.
Who's that?
And, well, you check out his Twitter account.
I'll have to.
So, yeah, I'm not going to spill the beans, but he is a recording artist retained by Crossing Clay Studios, and enjoy some authentic Canadian blues by one of the most misfortunate blues players of all time. With that, this episode actually, Benjamin, will be probably available like this evening.
Oh, good.
Yeah, by the time you wake up, you'll be able to post it.
Fantastic. And I guess it'll only be a day late. That's awesome. I got one more little amuse-bouche, little tiddly bit to share with you guys. It's not really little, it's quite a big one. So as you can tell, I kind of fell into a rabbit hole researching Canadian national symbols. And I came across one that I was quite surprised by, that I did not even know that we had. Like, things like a tartan make sense because we have a huge Scottish influence on our culture. We all know about the national anthem, and we know about our one of our national animals, the beaver. Makes total sense. It's a dumb national animal, but it's one that we have. National anthem, we sing it all the time in school and at sports games and stuff. We know about that one. Did you know that we have a national breed of horse?
I do, because I was doing research at the same time as you.
What do you know about the Canadian horse?
Absolutely nothing. I passed by because I don't know much about horses, so I just went, oh, okay, I'll keep looking.
So, and when I say this is a national horse breed, it is an actually recognized by Parliament national horse breed. And it was in 2002 adopted as our second national animal. It is called the Canadian horse, or French Canadian horse.
Oh.
It is actually descended from a line of horses that were sent to Canada from Normandy and Brittany by the King of France in 1665. Which at the time, those two regions were kind of the center for French horse breeding. They're a mix of different breeds. It includes Bretons, Andalusians, Arabians, and Barb horses. Those should all be fairly recognizable. Oh, and Norman horses. These are pretty recognizable breeds of horses. They're pretty well known. Mm-hmm. But all that mixed heritage kind of leads into what would become the French Canadian horse. The horses thrived in Canada despite the poor conditions that they were being kept in, because it was Canada in 1665, very underdeveloped country at the time.
Yes.
Did you know that a lot of the very famous American breeds actually trace their heritage back to French Canadian horses?
Wow.
So we're talking Morgans, American saddlebreds. These were a lot of the kind of famous American war horses and ponies and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They had French Canadian horses in their heritage along the line, because they were a very nearby location to get horses.
Yeah.
The Canadian horse actually had such a good reputation that thousands were actually imported to the United States during the Civil War to be used by the North.
As cannon fodder. Just ridiculous.
Yeah.
Let's send a bunch of horses so we can chew them up into a ground burger.
Well, speaking of,
Yeah.
they were considered an instrumental asset in the victory of the North, some saying that the North won solely because they had better horses than the South, though I really think that the better horses was just a symptom of the North being better supplied overall than the South.
Yeah.
The
Yeah, I
South was
agree.
not a very well supplied army. They were quite a guerrilla force compared to the Union Army, which was very much had a
was
lot
the
more
army.
international support.
Yeah. Yeah, well, the Southern Army, of course, was a ragtag band of fugitives that pulled itself into an armed force.
Yeah.
The Union Army was the army of the U.S.
That's right. It was an army.
Yeah.
This overall had a negative effect on the breed, however. War casualties and massive exports to other countries contributed to a decline in the numbers of the horse, such that by the year 1880, the breed was almost extinct.
Yeah.
As a result, export of the horses were forbidden by law in Quebec. Breeding programs were started, but even so, by 1970, there were only 400 horses left.
Wow.
In the 70s, another breeding program was started, and by the 90s, the herd had grown to about 3,000 strong,
Okay.
as the breed grew in popularity. It was initially considered the official breed of Canada in 1909, and as I said, in 2002, it was declared a national animal symbol of Canada, making it one of only two, the other being the beaver. And in 2010, Quebec declared it a heritage breed of the province. So, this popular and powerful breed must be the ones that the Mounties ride, right?
No, I bet they ride quarter horses.
Not even. The breed of horse used by the Mounties' musical ride performance are thoroughbreds.
Oh, you're kidding me.
Usually 3/4 to 7/8 thoroughbred.
Wow.
Yeah. The Canadian horse is quite a bit shorter than a thoroughbred, though it shares its coloration with them. Canadian horses stand between 14 and 16 hands, so about 142 to 163 centimeters.
Yeah.
Whereas a thoroughbred will typically stand 15 to 17 hands tall.
Yeah.
Thoroughbreds are also a hot-blooded horse, meaning they're quite temperamental, and they are typically used as race horses, the musical ride being the one exception. Canadian horses, on the other hand, are warm-blooded at best and are kind of considered to be appropriately, like, they're good for light draft work, trail riding, and they apparently make great war horses.
Well, I guess,
if their use in the Civil War is any indication.
I'm surprised that, are they, I wonder what, like, the Toronto police use horses for crowd control. I wonder.
Yes, they do. I don't know what breed they use.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. I hadn't done any research on the horse at all. I didn't think there'd be enough on it, so I didn't go into.
Well, here's something else that I found. This is my favorite fact about the Canadian horse. They actually have a very specific naming convention for Canadian horses, which is actually very unusual. Normally, there's no complex naming convention for horses.
Right.
But there are actually like regulations governing how you name a Canadian horse.
Oh.
So the first part of their name is the herd name, which is the name for the farm or the herd where the horse was bred. For instance, a herd name might be something like Maple Lane.
Okay.
The second name is the given name of the horse's sire. For instance, if you had a horse named Maple Lane Duke Rebel, its child would go by Maple Lane Rebel and then a given name. Oh. Finally, the given name is actually determined by the letter assigned by the Canadian horse breeders for a given year. For instance, this year's letter, 2019, is G. And I'm not making that up. It actually is G for 2019.
Okay.
Next year, it's going to be H.
H. I'd rather have H, but G, let's see. Maple Lane Rebel George.
Gary,
George.
Yeah.
Gertrude.
So if exactly. So if a horse, if Maple Lane Duke Rebel sired a foal this year, his offspring might have a name like Maple Lane Rebel George.
Right.
If he sired a horse in this upcoming January, it might be named Maple Lane Rebel Horace.
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool.
If Gary was then leased out in 2021 to a herd named Nutty Oats, that foal might be named Nutty Oats Gary Ivy.
What weird, yeah. It's kind of an interesting, but it helps you track the horses. I can understand why they would do it.
Well, exactly. I think that's part of it, is that because it is such an important breed to Canada's heritage, they want to make sure that they're able to track the horses. It should be noted that just because two horses have the same herd name, that doesn't actually necessarily mean they're related.
Right.
And that's because the herd name just indicates the farm or herd that leased or had the horse that sired the foal.
Right.
So that's how you could end up with, like, you know, Maple Lane Duke Rebel siring a horse that's herd name is like Nutties.
Right.
That second name is more important for indicating any sort of relationship to one another.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's all the
cool.
information I have about Canadian horses.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, not enough for a full episode, but great for a little bit of a tasty treat, a little nummy little crumbly bit of information.
Well, I continue to work on my episode on Peter Demeter.
I'm looking forward to you having that ready.
We didn't want to roll it out as our pre-Christmas episode.
Yeah. And then I think next week we have a fun episode that my wife has been cooking together. It's going to involve us getting a little bit drunk and then talking about a certain political party in Canada.
Awesome. That'll be good. I like that drunk part of it. So before we go, just want to give a shout out to our patrons again, the Northwestern Whispers podcast. I think you guys should really check them out if you're into the spookier stuff that we cover. They do a wonderful job covering hauntings, paranormal occurrences, and stuff like that. So for sure, check them out. That's Western Whispers. Very cool.
I also want to say that I am cooking up something special for early next year. I'm not going to get into huge details yet, but I want you to keep your eyes open on my Twitter page at Canuckinomicon, because I will announce it there when it's ready. But I am putting together another podcast, a second podcast. It'll be a once-a-month podcast, so don't worry. Canuckinomicon's not going anywhere. It's going to be here weekly as always. Next year we'll probably be taking a break around May or April just to give us some time to get some topics together for our third season. And yes, we're doing a third season, guys. Don't worry. We're going to be here. But thank you very much for listening and joining us. We are coming close to our 1-year anniversary. I believe our first episode was released in February or March last year.
We'd have to look. I was thinking February, but
I think it might have been February.
Yeah.
But we'll let you guys know. We'll probably come up with an extra fun topic for our 1-year anniversary. But yeah, so thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed this little fun episode. A bit of a nice break after talking about a destructive cult that is still operating in Quebec last week. So
yeah, exactly. It was heavy.
All right.
But
so
the music
thank you
was
very
light.
much for coming.
That was the difference. Awesome.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
All right. Take it easy, guys. Keep your eyes open.
Goodbye.
Canuckinomicon is a production of Crossing Clay Studios. We can be found on Twitter at Canuckinomicon, and you can contact us through email at canuckinomicon@gmail.com. Please be sure to share us with your friends and family, and keep your eyes open.